Hello, awesome people. Welcome back to the Awesomeness Podcast. I'm Bianca Bonciu, author of The Greatest Love of All, and today I want to talk about something that completely changed my life, learning to enjoy my own company. Now, before we begin, I want to clarify something. This episode is not about avoiding people. It's not about becoming a hermit. It's not about deciding that you don't need relationships, friendships, family, or connection. Human beings are social creatures. Connection matters. Love matters. Friendship matters. Community matters. This episode is about something different. It's about what happens when you stop treating being alone like a punishment and start experiencing it as freedom, because that shift changes everything. For a long time, I think many of us are afraid of being alone. Not because being alone is actually terrible, but because we're uncomfortable with ourselves. Nobody really teaches us how to enjoy our own company. We learn how to make friends, we learn how to date, we learn how to network, we learn how to fit in, but very few people teach us how to sit alone with our own thoughts and genuinely enjoy the experience. So we spend years chasing connection without first building a relationship with the one person who will be with us for our entire lives, ourselves. And I think that creates a lot of unnecessary suffering. I remember periods of my life when being alone felt uncomfortable. Not because anything bad was happening, but because silence felt strange. I felt like I always needed something: a conversation, a relationship, a distraction, some kind of external validation, some proof that I mattered. And when you're operating from that place, something interesting happens. You start accepting things you shouldn't accept. You tolerate situations you shouldn't tolerate. You stay in relationships longer than you should. You ignore red flags. You make excuses for people. You lower your standards, not because you don't know better, but because being alone feels scarier than being disappointed. I think that's something a lot of people can relate to. If we're being honest, many unhealthy relationships survive because people are afraid of loneliness, not because the relationship is wonderful, not because it's healthy, not because it's aligned, but because the alternative feels frightening. So people choose familiar disappointment over unfamiliar solitude. And I understand that, I really do, because I've been there too. But eventually, I discovered something surprising. The thing I was afraid of wasn't actually that scary. At some point, I started spending more time with myself intentionally. Not because I had some grand self-development plan, it just happened naturally. I started taking walks alone. I started going on little adventures by myself. I started sitting in coffee shops with a notebook. I started reading books on my balcony. I started going places without waiting for someone else to join me. And something unexpected happened. I started enjoying it, not tolerating it, not surviving it, actually enjoying it. I discovered that my own company wasn't boring. I discovered that I had interesting thoughts, creative ideas, dreams, curiosities, stories. I discovered that I genuinely liked spending time with myself. And once that happened, solitude stopped feeling lonely. It started feeling peaceful. And there is a huge difference between loneliness and peace. Loneliness feels like something is missing. Peace feels like nothing is missing. That's a completely different experience. One of the biggest surprises was realizing how much creativity lives in silence. So many of my best ideas arrived when I wasn't trying to impress anyone. When I wasn't performing, when I wasn't scrolling, when I wasn't distracted. Just me. A notebook, a walk, a quiet afternoon, some music, a cup of tea. That's often where the magic happens. Because when the noise gets quieter, you can finally hear yourself. And sometimes you've been trying to hear yourself for years. Another thing that changed was my standards. This is probably the biggest lesson of all. The more I learned to enjoy my own company, the higher my standards became. Not because I became arrogant, not because I thought I was better than anyone, but because I finally understood what peace felt like. And once peace becomes familiar, chaos loses its appeal. That's when everything shifts. When you're uncomfortable being alone, almost any company feels better than solitude. But when you genuinely enjoy your life, the equation changes. Now people have to add value to your life. They have to make your life better than the peaceful life you already have. That's a very different standard. You stop asking, do they want me? And you start asking, are they good for me? You stop asking, how do I get them to stay? And you start asking, do I actually enjoy having them in my life? That's a powerful shift. And this applies to more than romantic relationships. It applies to friendships, family dynamics, work environments, communities, everything. Because once you discover that your happiness doesn't depend on constant external validation, you become much harder to manipulate, much harder to guilt, much harder to control. People can still disappoint you. People can still leave. People can still misunderstand you. But your foundation becomes stronger because your foundation is no longer built on them. It's built on your relationship with yourself. One thing I want to emphasize is that enjoying your own company doesn't mean isolating yourself. It doesn't mean shutting people out. In fact, I think it makes relationships better because now you're choosing people from a place of abundance instead of fear. You're not saying, I need someone. You're saying, I like my life and I'd love to share it with wonderful people. That's a healthier place to build connections from because healthy relationships are not about rescuing each other from loneliness. They're about enhancing lives that are already meaningful. I think one of the greatest gifts you can give yourself is becoming someone you enjoy spending time with. Think about that for a moment. If you had to spend every day with yourself, which of course you do, would you enjoy that company? Would you be kind to yourself? Would you encourage yourself? Would you support your dreams? Would you make yourself laugh? Would you speak to yourself the way you'd speak to someone you love? Because that relationship matters. It might be the most important relationship you'll ever have. And if being alone currently feels uncomfortable, that's okay. You don't have to force yourself to love it overnight. Start small. Take yourself out for coffee. Go for a walk without your phone. Read a book in the park. Visit a museum. Watch a sunset. Spend a little time getting to know yourself. Not the version of you that exists for other people. The real you. The one underneath all the expectations. The one underneath all the noise. You might discover someone wonderful. The truth is, being comfortable alone isn't about avoiding people. It's about freedom. It's about knowing that your happiness isn't held hostage by who stays and who leaves. It's about knowing that you can create a beautiful life regardless. It's about becoming your own safe place. And once you do that, relationships become a choice instead of a necessity. That's where real freedom begins. So if there's one thing I hope you take away from today's episode, it's this. Learning to enjoy your own company isn't the end of connection. It's the foundation of healthy connection. Because when you're no longer afraid of being alone, you're finally free to choose relationships for the right reasons. Not because you're afraid, not because you're lonely, not because you're settling, but because those people genuinely make your life better. And that's a beautiful place to be. Thank you so much for spending this time with me today. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with someone who might need to hear it. And remember, you are enough. Your own company is valuable, and the relationship you build with yourself will influence every other relationship in your life. Until next time, keep shining, keep growing, and keep being awesome. Bye, everyone.